All right, welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pusher podcast. We're here together in person. This is wild. We just finished up a round of golf and said, while we're here, let's record a podcast. So we're here in person. Formula One testing has been going on over the past 2 days. So we're going to talk about it. Yesterday, I reacted to day one. Now we're here reacting to day two, things going on, and telling you guys everything you need to know about F1 testing. Brandon, how you feeling?
Feeling great. We made it. I know I keep saying that. I feel like, we made it. We keep making it.
Yeah.
But we're finally here, and we see cars on track, which is awesome. It's been great to kind of watch. I've been watching live because testing starts at 1 a.m. our time, so a little tough. But it's been really good to see the cars on track, and we get to talk about it today. And I think preseason testing isn't something that a lot of fans watch, so hopefully this podcast will help other people be able to connect to what testing is and why is it important for the teams and the drivers, and why is it exciting for fans. So
well, I feel like we're blessed to have an F1 TV subscription, so we do get to watch it. I feel like I wake up and get to catch the last hour of it every day in the morning when I'm getting up and getting ready for work. I will admit, I work from home, obviously. The last few days, I've had F1 TV open in a different tab while I'm doing my different things, just to get to capture some of the action. Do you want to give us a quick rundown of what F1 testing is all about? So
F1 testing happens before the start of the season. The past few years, it's been 1 week before. The past few years, it's been held at the same circuit that the first race is at. That's Bahrain. So it's split up into 3 days, 8 hours of testing each day into 2 4-hour sessions. The teams are supposed to split the time evenly between the two drivers. The driver can either get a full day or they can split a day. No matter what, they'll have one split day, and then the teams can decide how to split it up the rest of the time. But it's basically extended practice sessions. That's the idea. It's very important for teams to just get time in on the track. They put a lot of work in over the off season and the previous season in these cars, and they haven't actually gotten to drive them yet. So
it's exciting. Cars are back on track. I miss the days when it was at Barcelona. I never thought that I would say, I miss Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona, but I do. I remember my very first F1 testing in 2020 before COVID happened. It was still 2 weeks, and so they would have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday like they have right now, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the next week, and then race week would happen, and you would see teams show up with cars that were different the second week. They'd have an A spec the first week, a B spec the second week. It was crazy. Obviously, in this cost cap era, it makes sense to have less testing. Obviously, giving the teams less data will make the season more interesting. It is a little unfortunate, I think, that it's at the same venue as the first race, and so they're going to get all this running in Bahrain in pretty similar conditions to what the race will be. Tomorrow when they're doing testing in the evening is going to be what qualifying will be 1 week later, obviously, because the race weekend is up a couple days, because the race is on Saturday next week. So might ruin a little bit of the surprise for the first race, but then we'll get the next 23 races to see some surprises. Any other big overviews of testing you think we should know about?
Other big overviews, there's a couple things that teams use to kind of help them understand the aerodynamics of the car. One of them is called aero rakes. They're basically big metal frames that are put on the cars, either right behind the side pods or right behind the actual wheels in the back of the car. These big metal rakes hold a bunch of sensors that measure the way air is flowing, how fast air is flowing, and that kind of thing. Hopefully to help the team better understand what they've already, kind of thought about in the wind tunnels and the design phase of the car. But we've got aero rakes, and we have FlowViz paint, which is really brightly colored paint that the teams will paint on certain parts of the car. Oftentimes you'll see this a lot on the side pods of the vehicle or on the front wing. So this paint, they paint it on, and then they go out for a lap, and the paint stays wet, and then it will flow in the same way that the wind is flowing over the car, the air is flowing over the car. So it kind of, again, another tool to help them understand what the aerodynamics of the car is doing and how it's behaving as opposed to in the wind tunnel, because there's only so much you can do in a wind tunnel. So there's another couple things that teams use to gather more data, and
Yeah, I really enjoy getting to see the Flovis paint this year because it's like the exact same green as is on the steak, and so there's like all the memes online of like the Visa Cash App RB just murdered a steak in turn 11 as it's driving with all that Flovis paint on the front wing that they had. So it's funny to see that. And then if a state car puts the Flovis on, I don't know if they're learning anything because it just runs in. I think they had some red Flovis that they were putting on there, so they still got some stuff. And then the aero rigs, you see Haas not put K-Mags on correctly. He went out, it was flapping in the wind. I was like, man, that team is
come right back in.
Yeah, that team's gonna finish last if you can't even screw a bolt in tight to put that on. Yeah. Anyways, testing, obviously, as you guys have seen, Max Verstappen finished in first place in the very first day of testing by over a second. But it's important to remember that it is testing, so these aren't completely competitive times. You can't compare them exactly across teams. Obviously, teams can use all 5 tires while they're at testing this week, and so that's not the same range of tires that will be at Bahrain next week. They'll have the hardest 3 available for Bahrain next week. So if you see drivers going out on the C4 and C5 this week, those tires will not be available at Bahrain. So that's just getting glory runs to truly see how fast the car can go, how it responds on those tires, but aren't necessarily showing competitive times. It is still a little bit worrying that Max Verstappen was 1.1 seconds ahead. Like, I know there's variation in setup, variation in run, all the thing. I don't know if there's 1.1 second of variation. I mean, that's crazy.
I mean, it truly is. And I mean, similar to last year's testing, it seems like Red Bull and Max are up front, which is kind of what everybody was expecting. But you know, it'd be nice to see a little bit closer of a fight. Yeah, I mean, still would like Max to win, but just by
I was hoping it wouldn't be that much. But there was some hope because Sergio didn't finish P1 today. Yeah, Carlos finished P1 for Ferrari. So either there is a little hope that the teams are closer than we thought, or there's hope for no championship battle because Sergio Perez is already 7 seconds behind Max Verstappen and he won't even be finishing P2 this year. So there's either a whole lot of hope or none at all.
Yeah.
So nothing in between.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the Ferraris have looked really strong, especially over day 2. I think the car looks pretty good. I feel like, man, when I was watching a little bit back today, there was just a lot of, big snap for Sergio Perez, big snap for Sergio Perez, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah, he definitely didn't look as comfortable in the car as Max Verstappen did. I would like to think that Ferrari and McLaren seem to be the teams that will be most easily in second place or third place. I think McLaren is showing promising pace. They've been fighting at the top both days of testing. The problem is they haven't done a lot of laps. They've spent a lot of time in the garage in all 4 sessions, not getting a lot of laps. I think Oscar Piastri was in the 30s today with the number of laps that he did. Lando Norris might have ticked it over into 40 when he got in for the last 30 minutes of the session, but then got interrupted with the VSC and safety car testing. So it's concerning to see that McLaren haven't been able to put a lot of laps in their car this year in testing.
Yeah, and I think when you see teams get up there in the lap count, that's a great indicator of the reliability of the car. Max I think put in 130 laps or something yesterday,
in the 30s for sure.
And I mean, with McLaren not even putting in 30 and 40 today. I mean, it's concerning to see, but hopefully they can get a good day in tomorrow, and we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. It's at least encouraging to see that they haven't had any major engine failures. Hopefully it's all software stuff inside the car they can get figured out, and they'll be all right for the rest of the season. But for the promising pace that they have, it would be really unfortunate if they were plagued by reliability and we didn't get to see Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri at the front. What do you think about Mercedes? What do you think about them so far in testing?
I don't know. They're kind of a hard one to peg, I feel like. Let's see. They've been on day 1 they were 2.7 seconds off the pace, and day 2 they were 1.1 seconds off the pace. So, I mean, day 1 not so great. That was George Russell. Lewis Hamilton today, 1.1 seconds off the pace. That's much better, kind of in the range of what Max was putting in yesterday. So we'll see, but their front wing is interesting, and
interesting.
So far they haven't really changed much about it. So
they must like what they're seeing.
Yeah,
there's definitely been teams that have done changes to different parts of the car. We've seen Red Bull trying out different air intakes all throughout testing. They have just been closing and opening different slots on the car. But the fact that Mercedes haven't deployed a massive B-spec version of the front wing tells me that they're confident in what they saw in the wind tunnel, and also what it's shown up on track, that they haven't used anything else with it. But yeah, it'll continue to be interesting to see where Mercedes is. It feels like maybe they're not in the top 3. Just based on the first 2 days of testing, it says maybe there is a little bit of a gap to McLaren and Ferrari ahead. But obviously, we won't know until we get to qualifying in Bahrain. That's the first time that we'll get true competitive sessions. I think tomorrow evening obviously will be the most reflective. It usually is. The evening of the last day of testing is usually when drivers put on the softest tires, the lowest fuel, and get out there and see what the car can really do. But I think even more so because it will be exactly the same conditions as Q3.
Literally, it'll be
same day, same time, the whole deal. And so I think having that similarity will encourage the drivers to really go for it at the end. They'll be using the setups that they'll want to use next weekend. And so I think, we might see a pretty chill morning as teams get dialed in for the last session of the week. That I think means even more because it's going to be really reflective for next weekend.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see what happens tomorrow evening in Bahrain, tomorrow morning here in the United States. But it's going to be good, and I really can't wait to see what happens next week.
Yeah. All right, let's say you're a driver. You're showing up for preseason testing.
Yeah.
Would you want to go full day, AM, or PM? What's your preference?
I was actually thinking about this the past couple days. I think I would like to go like full day and probably PM in Bahrain. Like one full day and then a PM session. Yeah,
I think that is the ideal situation, which I'm pretty sure is what we're seeing Max Verstappen do, obviously. So he's clearly the number 1 driver there at Red Bull, but we all knew that. But yeah, I think the ideal situation would be able to have the whole day, day 1, to get yourself fully underneath the car and knowing everything about it, and then having that PM session on the last day to get in on the full competitive session. I think that's what I would like as well.
Yeah.
But Sergio, he'll be all right.
Yeah,
he'll be okay.
He'll be okay. You know, I mean, it is what it is. But I think what would be valuable to me as a driver would be having a full day off during testing, having to run every single day. I mean, these guys are in pretty good shape and they're used to driving Formula One cars, so it's probably not that big a deal to run every single day in testing. But at the same time, being able to run for a full day and then take a little bit of a break, like look back at what you did the previous day and then get another chance to go back after it on a third day, I think would be ideal. And just being able to rest in the middle of testing would be nice.
Yeah, it would be nice. I mean, you got to think, even them being in shape, it has been 2 months since they've been in a Formula One car, and you can do all the training that you want.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't have any experience with actually being in a Formula One car, but you can't replicate the G's and the braking force that you're actually experiencing in the Formula One car while doing all the other mental stuff. Like, I can imagine that it is a toll on their bodies that they haven't experienced for a little bit. So but it is difficult on them for sure.
Yeah, I think, obviously there's nothing that replicates being in a Formula One car other than being in a Formula One car. So that's another important part of testing, is to get everybody back in shape, not only the drivers, but give the engineers, the pit crew, give everybody some practice so that when time comes to go racing, everybody's ready to roll. So all right, let's talk about RB, Visa Cash App RB, our favorite team. Had to mention them. I think they've looked great. I
unfortunately, I think there's a little bit less paint on the car than when they released it. I think there's a little bit more carbon fiber on it, which is sad, but it still looks great under the lights. I obviously think it looks really good with Daniel's helmet. I knew it would be different when we showed up. I was sad whenever they launched it and it was the same one, but now he's got some patterns on it and some sparkles. It looks better. I'm content, but the car looks better than the one they were driving last year too. Obviously, Daniel Ricciardo P4 and P5 the first 2 days of testing. But even more so than the times, what seems important to me is that he seems at home in the car. Like if you look at his quick laps, he's not having to make a lot of corrections. Like the car is doing what he wants to do. You could listen to the commentators today. All of them were saying that he wasn't pushing the car or the track to their absolute limits whenever he was doing his fast lap. And so it's pretty encouraging to me to see that. But it'll also be interesting to see what Yuki does, having his first PM session of the week. Obviously, a little interesting there to see what's the number one driver dynamic. Obviously, Daniel getting the majority of the PM sessions, but Yuki getting the last one. Maybe them trying to balance both of the drivers who are pretty experienced, but it'll be fun to see what Yuki does tomorrow in relation to Daniel. Yeah,
it'll definitely be interesting. I mean, Daniel's times have looked better than Yuki's, but as you said, he's been in the PM sessions. The track conditions are obviously different in the evening, lending to faster times. So, but yeah, it's been really encouraging to see how well Daniel's been doing, and I think he might have a little bit more in the tank. We'll see next week, but
definitely so.
But yeah, I think Yuki's had a good test so far. Yeah, and I think he's definitely, we've talked about it a little bit in last season, but I think he's definitely maturing quite a bit. Yeah, and so it'll be really interesting to see how that dynamic between the two of them works out this season. I think Daniel being there has been good for Yuki. Yeah. Daniel's a pretty mature driver. Maybe not so much out the track. That's why everybody loves him. But he's a mature driver, and he's great. He's won 8 Grand Prix. So yeah.
What do you think about Aston Martin? Kind of been a quiet test for them. Been a little bit under the radar. Obviously, Lance Stroll has been in the 2 PM sessions, so maybe they're saving the juice for Fernando Alonso tomorrow when he gets in there. But what are your thoughts been for their testing so far?
I think it's been a good test. I mean, nothing major pops out and it's like, man, that sucked, or that was terrible. But I think it's been a good test so far, and it reminds me a little bit of last year's test. Last year, I mean, kind of towards the end of testing, I feel like on the 3rd day, everybody was like, okay, this isn't a fluke. Aston Martin's gonna be quick this year. Yeah. And so we'll see what happens tomorrow. But I think right now, what I see is maybe they're not as bad as everybody's kind of been predicting.
That's what I thought, is that maybe they haven't fallen off as much as I thought that they were going to. And maybe I don't remember last year's test or how I felt during the test because it was a year ago. Yeah. But I feel like I didn't really notice that Aston Martin was cooking until the 3rd day. Like I feel like the 3rd day happened and I was like, okay, they're gonna be all right. And so I truly wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow, come the end of it, we see like a Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso top 3, or Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso top 3, something along those lines with those drivers. That would not be surprising to me at all. Also, wouldn't be surprised if we've seen Lance in the P6, P7 range, and then when Fernando gets in PN, we see that it'll be another year of Fernando competing for podiums and Lance finishing P7, P8. So wouldn't be surprised by that at all. Alpine, what do you think?
I don't have much thoughts of them because I don't really know what they've been doing.
They've just been running around. And they've just been average.
So, yeah, I mean, I think their performances and, their livery was indicative of their performance in the past couple of days. So, very average, kind of underwhelming, and maybe there's a lot more potential that they haven't tapped into.
Yeah, so I don't know. They've gotten a lot of laps in, which has been good. They've been up towards the top of the lap count. Obviously, there are a lot of things different on that car. It looks very different from last year. That nose is fat and wide. Apparently, there's a lot of things at the back of the car that they changed as well. So, them getting the laps for the first 2 days, maybe it was just them figuring out the components of the car, all of those things, and maybe we'll see some more pace out of them tomorrow. But I don't know. It just feels like another year of Alpine in no man's land. Like, they're not slow enough to be with the Williams and the Haas and the Stake. Like, they feel set apart from them, but then they also feel a long distance away from the McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, and all of that. So
yeah, it just seems like they've been kind of, you know, in that rut of mediocrity for quite a while. And I mean, it makes sense. They've had a lot of turnover in the team this past year, you know, and that's tough, you know, to work through as a team if you've got people leaving and new people coming in all the time. But you know, Pierre and Esteban are fun drivers to watch. You know, they're both Grand Prix winners. Yeah. So I mean, they've got that under their belts, but yeah, it kind of feels like we've hit it right on the nose of like, just going to be average this year. And
sad to see.
Yeah.
Because in 2020, when Daniel Ricciardo was there, like, Renault looked like they're on the up and up. You know, they got 2 podiums that year. You know, Daniel Ricciardo had a very consistent year, and it was like Esteban's going to catch up once he gets more time in the sport. And then it's like they've just stayed at that same level while all the other teams have been going up, and it's sad to see. For
it
sure.
Is sad to see. But.
What about Williams? I feel like they've really underperformed this test. I expected more from them.
Absolutely.
And they feel slow to me, which is very unfortunate.
They've had some reliability issues. And Alex
reliability is like Logan Sargent spinning off at 11.
Well, there's that. Yeah, you can't really rely on Logan yet, unfortunately. But and then, you know, Alex had the engine issue that brought out the red flag, and so it seems like maybe they just haven't had enough time yet. And it's another one that's hard to peg, because I feel like kind of last year, the same thing of like, man, Williams, we don't know where they're at. You know? And then, you know, Alex will pop out these performances that are great, you know, and Logan's at the back, but it's all right, you know.
Well, the gap hasn't seemed as big. Like, I don't know if it's with the new car. Alex hasn't been able to push it to the limits yet. Obviously, I feel like he has had the better test so far than Logan, obviously. But the gap doesn't seem as big, which is nice. I think the really unfortunate thing with Williams is that they've had this car that has been, you know, it has to have this window that they can get the setup in, the conditions all right for them to be fast. And I just expect them to maybe like continue widening that window until they finally have like a consistent good car. And it doesn't feel like they've done that. It feels like they're lost, like that they don't know what to do with the setup this test. Like, they've been trying different things and nothing is really working. And so I don't know, it just feels like they haven't really made any progress either, as much as I wanted them to going into this year.
Yeah, you know, I kind of and sometimes with the teams, like, you know, the testing kind of bleeds over into the first, you know, 3-4 races where they're trying different setups. I think Bahrain is kind of a tough circuit to test on.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an outlier in terms of like tire degradation. It's very like high degradation circuit, so it doesn't necessarily give the teams great representation of how the tires perform on the car. So it's kind of interesting. So I'm thinking maybe Bahrain just isn't a great circuit for Williams.
Yeah.
And I mean, we saw last year, I remember specifically in Australia, Alex was running like P6 in the race. He had a great qualifying run in P6. He ended up crashing out of the race, which was unfortunate. But I mean, he was on for some great points in that race before. Yeah. Obviously, a lot of other people were on for some great points in that race before a lot of other crashes happened. But that's okay. It was a good race, and you know, I think to your point, it's a lot of the window of they just you know, why aren't they performing well at Bahrain? Like, it seems like maybe they should be.
Yeah, you know? I mean, definitely a higher speed track. Yeah. You know, having those multiple long straights, 3 DRS zones, like, you would think that would be an ideal track for Williams, but I don't know, maybe it's the dusty conditions on the circuit. You know, usually it's a little windy, some dust. Maybe it just doesn't suit the Williams. But like Australia is another outlier track where it's half street circuit, half park that's open for the year round, and and so that's another unique track as well. And so I think it's just going to be another year of Williams having to find their windows, and one week Alex will be finishing P8, the next week it'll be P18, and that's just the way it goes. But that means we have now mentioned every team at least once in this podcast. Whatever team you're a fan of, you can be content. this time next week, race weekend will be upon us. FP1 and FP2 will have happened by this time on a Thursday next week. We'll be going into quality day on a Friday, which is crazy. Race day on a Saturday. It's going to be awesome to get up and have a Formula One race on a Saturday. I'm pumped for that. But that means the Podium Pusher predictions are back.
Absolutely.
Last year, we started off the podcast hot. I mean, we made predictions. I got both of them right first week. And then by the end, we were going like 0 for 4. It was bad. So we have got to redeem ourselves this year. First predictions for the year, really setting the tone for a lot. Technically, we predicted the silly season, and then like the next day, Lewis Hamilton was announced to Ferrari, and we're like, well, that ruined that. So we got to get these predictions better, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Brandon, what is your first prediction for the Bahrain Grand Prix?
First prediction of the season. We're going on strong. That RB, not Red Bull, RB, has a car that makes it into Q3.
Just one?
At least one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're playing it safe at the beginning.
I'll give you at least one.
We're playing it safe here. Next prediction's a little bit more bold, but we'll get to that in a minute. I think they've got a solid car. Yuki's times haven't been bad.
Yeah.
So I think they've both got a shot. I fully expect Daniel to make it into Q3, and I think there's potential that Yuki could throw it in there too. I'll have a better idea after he gets the PM session tomorrow, but
yeah,
we'll see.
I could definitely see it. Wouldn't be surprising. I feel like Bahrain is definitely a good circuit for Yuki. Obviously, he scored points on his debut there a couple years ago, a lot of years ago now, I guess.
Yeah.
So been a good circuit for him. So I could definitely see an RB getting into Q3. My first prediction is maybe a little bit more bold. I think Max Verstappen will end the first race with a Grand Chelem. If you guys are not familiar with that, that is pole position, lead every lap, win the race, fastest lap. I wanted to predict that it'd be a super Grand Chelem, which means FP1, FP2, FP3, Q1, Q2, Q3, win fastest lap, which I totally wouldn't be surprised by. Totally would not be surprised if that happened. But I think
we'll start it off a little safe.
We'll start it off a little safe.
Yeah.
I just can't see like a situation where it doesn't happen. Like, brother was 1.1 seconds ahead his first day on dry tires in that car. Like, obviously he got a little bit of running in the wets in Silverstone a week ago, and they did the filming day shakeout thing. But 1.1 seconds is insane. And if Sergio Perez it can't even top his session and is going to be competitive to him, there's not a chance.
You know, there's not a chance. You know?
Lando Norris, he'll lock up in a turn one and mess up his qualifying lap like he usually does. I mean, there's no competition. It would have to be a mechanical failure to stop Max Verstappen from winning the Bahrain Grand Prix in my mind. And
which could happen.
It could happen. It has happened in the past. We've seen it happen. But I think it's going to be Max Verstappen. Pole, lead every lap, fastest lap, and the Grand Prix victory. Got to get all four. I'm not getting any points, so a bit of a bold prediction. But I think it's a likely
Max
one
is a good one to bet on. So,
yeah, for sure. He did get one of them last year. The last one was in Barcelona last year. He did get one, so he's done it before. We'll see if he does it again.
He had a couple in 2022.
Yeah,
I think, and 2021. I think he had.
Yeah, I think he probably had one then too.
Yeah. But
he's getting a lot. He just keeps winning.
Yeah.
I'm sure. It feels like he leads every lap. I know there was a stretch in 2023 where, like, the last time someone else had led a lap was in Miami.
Yeah,
it was Sergio Perez. It was like 2.5 months later where we were waiting for someone. He was on a 3-month-long Grand Chelem streak. Insane. But yeah, Max Verstappen, Grand Chelem, first race is my first prediction. Second prediction, hit us with it.
Second prediction, both Aston Martins finish in the points.
Ooh.
This is kind of going off what I was saying earlier. I think they've had a quietly good test. And, you know, I'm not boxing myself in saying that they're both going to get into Q3, qualify in the top 10. You know, I don't believe in Lance Stroll enough to say that.
Oh, he's not getting into Q3. He might not even get a Q1.
But I think they both finish in the points. I think the Aston Martin's fast. And I think it'll be a strong start to the season for them.
Yeah, I could see that happen for sure, especially with Bahrain being the first race of the season, pushing the cars for that many laps in a row. You're usually good from mechanical failure to someone being out of the race that way. I think the issue is it just seems so crowded for points this year. I mean,
Yeah,
I can
it
see
does.
Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, all RB and
yeah.
maybe Alex Albon all competing for points.
Yeah.
Like, that's 13 cars fighting for 10 positions.
Right, yeah.
In my heart, I have to feel like Lance Stroll is outside of the top 10 in driver talent on that list.
I would.
So we'll just have to see where the other cars land. Maybe even Alpine too could be in that list. That would be 15 cars fighting for 10 positions.
Yeah.
Which is tough, but I think it's definitely possible. I think Aston Martin probably is gonna show up anywhere between the 3rd and 5th best car, if I had to guess. I would say 4th or 5th, but maybe they could be 3rd, especially with Fernando Alonso. So we just have to see how Lance Stroll turns up. You're putting a lot of faith in Lance Stroll for the very first prediction, because he's the one this prediction ends on. I think you got it checked off for Fernando pretty easily.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, but I like the chances. Like you said, there's first race. There's a lot of room for error. Yeah, crashes, mechanical failures, mistakes by the drivers. Yeah. So
we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
we'll see. Maybe Esteban Ocon will get 35 seconds worth of time penalties in Bahrain again, and that'll give a position to Lance Stroll. My second prediction, very unorthodox, but I'm going to say that the announcers will not be quiet about the first 2 races of the season being on a Saturday. I don't know what the terms of that is going to be for it to be right, so I'm leaving myself I'll say at least double digits across the weekend.
Of them mentioning
double-digit times of them mentioning that the race is on
I think you got that in the bag.
Probably so.
Absolutely.
Probably so. I just think they're going to talk about it nonstop.
The first thing out of Crofty's mouth is going to be
lights out on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Or joining Formula 1 on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So I'll say, here, we'll define it differently, that I have to get annoyed by it. Like, if they just mention it, like, occasionally, differently, times throughout the thing, no, we have to actually feel a sense of annoyance. So, like, okay, I get it. Like, it's Saturday, not Sunday. I understand that. That'll be our new benchmark for it.
All right.
But that's my prediction. Because the race is going to be on Saturday, the commentators will not stop talking about it. And that's my prediction.
I think that's a solid one. We'll see. You got the first 2 races on a Saturday.
But I should just
again
carry it
on Saturday.
First 2 races. First 2 races on Saturday. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Podium Pusher podcast. As always, thanks for listening. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, if you haven't already, and TikTok. I almost forgot about that.
TikTok's a good one.
TikTok is a good one. Brandon, before we leave these lovely people, what are your parting podium thoughts?
Parting podium thoughts.
We've made it.
We made it. We did it, baby.
We're
here. We're back.
Oh,
man. It's going to be a great end to testing tomorrow. I think we're going to get some representative times. And, then we go into competitive sessions next Thursday, because the race is on a Saturday.
Next Friday, because practice is on Thursday. So the first competitive session will be on Friday.
You're right.
But the race was on a Saturday. If you guys didn't know that, the first 2 races are on Saturday. That's my parting podium thought, is that next week and the race after that are both on Saturdays, just so you guys know. Wanted them to know.
Don't miss it.
Don't miss it on a Saturday. All right, that's all we've got. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.
See ya.